We are watching this now. Game prices are collapsing. Publishers were wrong. Who could have guessed?
I've heard you, and with today's story, it seems the rest of the industry is also beginning to hear you. Now, this year started with the fear that gaming is getting more expensive. Microsoft and Nintendo pushed the ceiling to $80, an impossibly high ask, especially as everything else has got more and more pricey. But elsewhere in the industry, something quieter is happening. And it's this. The games that you are actually buying, well, we've got the data about them.
It's mostly indie games at this point. Why do I know it? Because I haven't seen any good AAA games at all. When was the last time you have seen an announcement for a AAA game and you got excited? I didn't have that happen in a decade. So I imagine it took a little longer for others to realize how bad AAA games are. I think the last one that I bought was a AAA game. Was The Division 2. And yes, I bought that. I played it. How long did I play The Division 2? Let's check. I actually only have them on the Ubisoft thingy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, forget that. When we got from girls to games, we just now got here. Bro played a game that don't exist. It exists, and they even were working on a third division, which is completely. I'm not going into that rant again. That would be the fourth time I'm ranting about the Division 3.
And as it turns out, they're getting cheaper. $100 for Grand Theft Auto 6. That was the rumor that kicked off this year's anxiety about game prices. It was one that Take-Two have been happy to downplay, if not outright refute. But with GTA now delayed, we won't know the truth until next autumn, though we've already seen audiences reject the new price ceiling of $80. Xbox tried to put The Outer Worlds 2 at $80, presumably buying some headroom for Microsoft's lovely 30% profit margin demand. But they quickly reversed that decision. The inference from that? They didn't see enough pre-orders. People essentially voted with their wallet. Just that, unlike real votes, the great thing about voting with your wallet is you don't need to do anything to cast your vote. It turns out audiences just wouldn't pay that price for The Outer Worlds 2. But you know what they would pay? The regular price. Because, selling at a normal price, the game did have a top 10 launch. Though, the right product at $80 will sell. Mario Kart World kind of proved that. Even bundled with Switch 2 for many buyers, you don't get a 92% attach rate across.
By the way, I will not buy the Switch 2, even if I would be into the Switch 2 and to Nintendo games, because you don't own the Switch 2. You acquire a license to use it. You're gonna speedrun eating to go back here. Well, good luck with that.
9.57 million copies without lots of people shelling out the full amount. But that's only one side of this story, because the reality we need to dive into today is about how off-console prices have been plummeting. But there's a not so funny thing hanging over all of this, and it's the simple fact that video game spending is actually falling, but subscriptions are rising. We've seen that in analyst reports, and too often, well, we're paying for subs we don't use. That's why Rocket Money is today's video sponsor.
Oh, of
because
course.
they make it easy to get a handle on your subscriptions and get saving. And you can even get started today for free at Rocket. If you've bought a game on Steam in the last 18 months, you probably paid $20 or less. In fact, you've probably been paying less since 2023 than you did from...
I actually bought the deluxe edition for Arc Raiders because I think the game is worth the money, at least in the long run. I got the game, I got some extra, aka cosmetics, and 20 something bucks in worth in their currency. And to be fair, how fun the game is, I would have spent the money on it anyways. So I just got it.
2020. Now, what are these numbers? Well, these numbers are from the research of Simon Carlos, who runs the excellent Game Discover Co. newsletter. He tracked average and median prices for the top 50 new monthly games on Steam during that period of time, ranked by copy sold, and you're looking at the graphs now. We see a median price as low as $10, as high as $20, with averages between $16 and $29. Shocker.
That's very low. Very, very low. But that's buying new games. For example, I've barely bought any game this year. I did spend almost $500 on Path of Exile though. Or even over that. So that's where all my money was going this year.
Steam users are thrifty people who like deals. We probably didn't need this much analysis to work that out, but that's not where I'm ending. Here's where things get truly interesting. From February 2023 to October 2025, the average amount of money spent on a best-selling game went down by 2%. The median, though,
I'm not surprised.
it went down by 20%. That means that more games are selling at a lower price. And whenever Carlos took a look at the revenue earned, the trend actually held. Now, in theory, that should favor more expensive games. They generate more revenue per sale. But even there, the median dropped from $23.75 to $20.35. That's about 14% of a drop. And do bear in mind that as this has been happening, the currency has been inflating. So even as players feel like they are being pressured towards $80 games, what they're actually buying is getting cheaper and cheaper. And what's key is that this is not showing.
One reason for that is that most of these cheap games are better than the expensive ones. I have played so many inexpensive games this year that are way more fun than AAA games. Now, to be fair, I don't play AAA games. I just look at them, I look at the gameplay, I look at cinematics, and I go, this is shit. Why would I? And then I buy something for $5 or $10 and have a jolly good time. Remember, for the price of, let's say, $70, $70 AAA game, you can get, I don't know, 7 games, indie games for that, and have the same amount of fun. But no, not the same amount of fun. The same time you spend in those games, but it's fun. Because most AAA games aren't fun. They aren't made to be fun. They are made to make money and be as profitable as possible. That's why they aren't fun.
Showing us what has been offered to players, it's showing us what players have actually chosen. It's showing the best-selling premium games on the platform, and that does feel like a bit of a win, right? That we are seeing smaller teams with cheaper games beginning to dominate the sales space. That says a lot for the value of Steam, and in a world where people...
Yes, but they dominate because their games are just better. And they like making games. They don't come out and saying, oh, we hate gamers. That's literally what the people in the big studios do.
Would have to compare the price of a full console plus a subscription for multiplayer and more expensive games and weigh that up to a Steam machine with generally far cheaper games. Well, I think it also makes the Steam machine look stronger as well. Overall, though, it's somewhat validating an argument you see all the time, right? The argument people make every time someone suggests an $80 price point, which is that you make your profit in aggregate. So make your games cheaper and then more people will buy them. Buying 4 $20 indie games is to many people better than one $80 AAA game. Surely that's what's going on. Surely that's what everyone is doing. Well, ish. Let's look more into the data. Carlos gave us the perfect example. It's the September releases on Steam, where Silksong sold like gangbusters at $20, with 4.6 million copies shifted.
That game looks so beautiful. It's incredible.
on Steam alone. That's nearly double the sales of a full-price title like Borderlands 4. The immediate takeaway is a lower barrier to entry at the price of a couple of coffees, meaning you give yourself the widest possible audience and a big game. And in theory, that also means that more people can buy more games. But it's actually not quite that simple. You see, regardless of price, the majority of game players don't actually buy that many games. Circana's Future of Games report surveyed
I'm not surprised by that. Because of all the live service games. I mean, I am literally playing 4. Arc Raiders, War Thunder, Path of Exile 1, Path of Exile 2. And then occasionally single player games. I'm completely done when it comes time-wise to playing games. I don't have time for, oh, I buy me a 80 bucks AAA game. Number one, that's a lot of money. Number two, the game is most likely shit. And I have other games that I'm then playing. So why would I?
1,000 US players on self-reported purchase patterns. About a third of the market says they buy just one game or fewer a year.
Let's see. 4% more often than once a month. What, approximately a third of video game players purchase a new video game less often than once per year, while about 36% purchase a new game once a quarter or with higher frequency. Purchasing frequency. How often do you typically purchase a new game? More often than once a month, 4%. Those people have a lot of time and money. About once a month, same. About once every 3 months, I can see that. About once every 6 months, totally see that. About once a year, still see that. Less often than once a year. That's really not a lot. Now don't get me wrong. Back in the day when I was in school and stuff like that, I bought more games than I do now. But games were cheaper. They didn't cost as much sum-wise, but they weren't really cheaper. You know, inflation and stuff like that. But I also played way more different games. Literally from simulated economy games to ego shooters. And everything in between, basically. So, yeah, I had a lot of games. When I was 16, 17, I bought more games in 1 year than I now buy in, I don't know, 5 years or something like that. It's bad. It's really bad.
Just under 2/3, 63%, buy fewer than 2 games a year. That is absolutely insane to me, but I suppose when I think about what my norms are, or maybe you do the same, we probably have a sampling bias, one that is in and around enthusiast gamers. We do buy more games, but it seems that with broader audiences, that is less the case. Now, obviously, that's Circana doing a survey of 2,500 people in the US. It's good enough work. It's hypothesis
2,500 is not a lot.
generating work, but obviously, it is just a survey. Though I would say that when you think about games...
Interesting would be getting data from Steam. But I think we will never do that.
Overall, a lot of it is plausible. You see, a lot of people are only interested in buying this year's sport game, or this year's Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah.
This year's Call of Duty. Maybe
Yeah,
they
not
bought
this
Battlefield
year's.
instead. But the majority of any product-based industry is often people who are gently engaged in it. Not people, perhaps, like you and me, but it's actually the top of the chart that complicates things here, because those people probably aren't the ones buying indie games for $20 en masse. No,
Yeah.
that's the other 37% of people, but even that 37% is quite stratified. 22% say they buy a game every 3 months. That's 4 games a year, and that adds up with Valve's own data. Yes, Valve's own data suggests that users played only 4 games on Steam on average in 2023 and 2024.
What games did I play this year? not this one. Arc Raiders, War of Thunder, Path of Exile 1, this piece of shit. Path of Exile 1, Halls of Torment, Tower Dominion, Half-Life 1, Blue Shift, I didn't play that. I played Stellaris, I played this piece of shit. Marvel Rivals, but I didn't spend any money, so it doesn't really count. Vampire Survivors, Replicator, neat game, but I have problems with the camera movement. I played a little bit of Doom, and that's it. That's all the games that I played this year. Wait, I didn't play this one this year? This one is actually good. Wait, I didn't play this one? This year? I thought I played Tower Hunter this year. Welcome back, Hans.
A further 10% buy a new game monthly, which is of course great for an industry releasing thousands of games a year. But we need to put this in perspective. If you bought Silk Song and any other game in September, 2 games in 1 month, then you are only 4% of the games market. That's kind of wild. And even if we're allowed to some swing and fuzz...
That's actually low, yeah. That's a low percentage. You are in the top tier of gamers. You are hardcore.
Because a survey is only as good as the survey, the point I think still does stand. And of course, it's a point that we do see in a lot of other things as well. Take whaling, right? Whaling and free-to-play games, where the majority of the revenue does come from a very small strata of that game's player base. And when we
there's a reason I don't play those games. You eat the greatest meal of your life. Good for you.
see data like that, I think we begin to understand why all of those publishers and indie devs moved their releases away from Silksong, or of course, away from GTA 6. And in the case of the indies, it would especially be because most of those indies are at the same price point or cheaper than Silksong. So if you're releasing against Silksong, a game with massive cut-through to enthusiast audiences, if you're releasing against that, then, well, you're betting on the 4% of the market turning up that does actually buy multiple games a month. That doesn't really seem like a great strategy, does it? And here's the...
You would say Umumazume Pretty Derby would win? Oh my god. That game. Yeah. My problem is the gacha. The gacha is a problem. I don't have a problem with basically girlfriend simulators. I would completely play that. Completely. 100%. But, you know, there's not really anything out there that I would say, oh yeah, this is a full price worthy game. And the full price, I mean, $60 or something like that. And I don't go for, you know, gacha games because I would have to spend thousands there. And I don't want to do that. You play the game, it's peak. Yeah, I have heard it's good, but no, I don't. I will never.
Kicker. What if I told you there's another layer? You see, this chart does not distinguish between new games and already released games that are on sale. Every time someone buys a game...
Yeah, which is also a problem. Only because you buy you buy a game doesn't mean it's a new game. It can be 10 years old. If you don't have it, you buy it, you enjoy yourself, right? It doesn't... Yeah, that's also a problem. If you bring out a game, you have to compete with games that came out 10, 20 years ago. Basically, fundamentally. Which might be hard.
It's been out for 6 months, they're probably not buying a new game that month to go along with it, regardless of price. So, more people aren't buying games, even as prices keep trending down. Now, if that is the case, as a bunch of this data suggests, well, why then are audiences feeling like they are constantly being asked for more and more? When people are asked to pay $80...
Because the prices of the well-known and advertised IPs are going up. There, solve the problem. it has its own show and movies and games and songs. Yeah, I know. I know that. But I will never go into gacha games. Never. Never. That's the one line that I will not cross.
Or $70 for a video game, Nintendo, Microsoft, or Sony are basically banking on a fairly simple principle that the people who actually have money will spend it regardless of anything else that's going on. Essentially, they're betting on it being a premium product with inflexible demand. That is why marketing teams target those people. That's why those absurd collector's editions exist, right? The people who absolutely love games and have money. They're the people these companies can count on. The games industry basically thrives in people who can spend without thinking about it, which has always been the case. Buying more...
Which is true, yes. Yes. You only buy video games if you have the expendable money for it. Which I had as a kid, because I wouldn't spend any money on anything else. To be fair. All my money went into gaming. All my money. And when I got $50 per month as an allowance, I don't spend any money on anything else. Okay. CDs, for music and movies. But they weren't as expensive as games. Not even close. Well, actually, they were half the price. A CD was $20, maybe 25. When it goes high, 30. Okay, it was expensive. I'm starting to remember. But yeah, most money went to gaming.
More than one $60 game at launch has been unaffordable to people for years. But the problem is the proportion of people with money to spend freely actually does appear to be shrinking. Get this. As of September, the top 10% of earners accounted for 50% of US retail sales. And in the very same year, spending in games is actually down. The 18 to 25 age group in the US is spending nearly a quarter less in games this year. And everyone, just in large, is down a couple of percent. But on the whole, most...
Yeah. The destruction of society and the impoverishment of the middle class makes people spend less money on stuff. Duh. And on top of that, you have massive inflation. Duh. Of course people spend less money on video games. That's to be expected if it destroys society. What if my phone can compete with your laptop? Well, modern phones are faster than laptops in the past, which isn't hard. Because your phone can do whatever your laptop can do and can overtake it. Well, yeah, that's how things go.
Game spending is only a few points down. Now, given we're in rough economic times, that could seem like a good thing, right? Oh, the world is experiencing troubles, but games are only down in most categories by a few percent. What if I told you it's actually worse than that? You see, the difference that's been made up, right? What's made this only a few points down? Well, it's basically subscriptions making up the difference, because those have grown all year. But that comes from the bottom of the spending population, not the top, right? It comes from people who are seeking more and more value for their increasingly limited dollars, whilst also spending less and less on premium games. And I think that is the big tension that people are feeling. We're in a situation where game marketing and traditional big games...
I think so too. The lower percentile of the people just don't have the money to buy all these new games. It's very simple. What if there's a phone that has the power of a PC? Well, that's already the case. My phone has more power than a PC 20 years ago. It's just, you have to relativize what we are talking about here.
are basically out of reach to most of the audience, more so than perhaps ever in recent memory. But the companies haven't changed how they talk to players as a whole. A lot of the market has changed underneath those companies, but it's not really like it seems they've really changed their comms to match, and that is leading to people feeling ignored. It's leading to people facing demands that they cannot meet, and that's because the companies that used to be targeting them are now not targeting them. They are targeting someone with more disposable income. And that's a tough change to stomach. But by contrast, the $20 games on Steam are changing. Individual indie developers are watching game prices creep lower and lower, and they're just hoping that they will get enough sales to succeed, because they cannot afford to price higher and risk player blowback. Now, we're not quite at the mobile game space, where developers basically can't afford to price games as premium products anymore, but we are seeing a shift in how games are sold, and what that means.
Yeah, one dude making a great game and spending it, selling it for $20 makes way more money than a studio with 200 people that has to sell. They have to sell millions of copies for $60, or they lose money and go bankrupt. What if the company phones let the buyers custom their phones though? Like PCs can be customized. Funny thing, there was a guy that invented a phone like that. He got killed. I wonder why.
Lead to may not be great for all of us. Because if you can't ask players for more than $25 without facing comparisons to Silksong, then you may start having to scope your development very differently indeed. And that means that some traditional games simply would be out of reach. It could also mean that we do feel more and more nickel and dimed.
By the way, I think it's stupid to see a game that costs $20 and then go, oh yeah, but it's not like Silksong, you know, when it comes to, you know, what it has to offer. Silksong was developed by, I think, 3 guys or 4 over 10 years. I think it was 10 years or 8, something like that. Why are you comparing that? Why? It's another indie game that, you know, and the developers need to make money to, you know, make more games. And the thing is, if you just don't want to pay the money, then just wait until it's on sale. If the game is good enough for you to play it, then why are you complaining about $20? And yes, this is a very privileged take, but $20 aren't that much, especially if you compare to other things like AAA games. If the game is worth, why are we so anal about, oh, this isn't as great as Silksong, so it can't cost $20? I mean, sure, there are plenty of games that aren't worth $20. Of course there are. Of course. Like Concord. But there was Concord. What else? The last Prey that came out, that was actually liked by everyone but me, because it's not really Prey, it's just a horror game with the name Prey. Or Doom Dark Ages. At the beginning it looked like it would be cool, but then it turned out it just was a typical AAA game. Why are people always complaining about stuff when it doesn't even really matter? Because they want to complain. that person could have built the world more advanced than now. Yes, he could have. That's why he got killed. If you don't want to buy the game, you would say pirate it for free. Piracy, by the way, is back on track again. Everyone is pirating now because of all the subscription services and stuff like that. It's become so complicated to get what you want that piracy is back. It's so dumb. They literally defeated piracy with iTunes and with Netflix. Then they made it old shit again, and now piracy is back.
So, it's not all doom and gloom. It actually seems there's a lot of vibrancy in the indie scene. But what we are seeing is a changing market, changing behaviors, and a AAA sector that is struggling to keep up pace with that change. So no wonder they're out of touch. And speaking of out of touch, Bungie. That's certainly something a lot of people would say about them, and they have just had some not so rosy news. Basically, a big write-off at the same time that they kind of admitted they shat the bed with Destiny 2. If you want to learn about that, watch this video next.
This was not a bad video. Not great, but not bad. Yeah, I can totally see where the problems are.